I got fired for getting pregnant by a patient in a coma. Part 1. My name is Julie. I'm 26, and until a few months ago, I worked as a night shift nurse at a high-end private hospital in Sacramento. The graveyard shift was always quiet. Dimmed lights, the constant hum of machines, the occasional beeping from heart monitors. The ICU had 8 beds, and during my shifts, only 3 were usually occupied. One of them was room 208. That room had been taken for over a year by a man no one really talked about. His name was Jacob, and he was 32 when he got into a motorcycle accident that left him in a persistent vegetative state. No visitors, no family. No one ever brought flowers or cards. Just silence. We called him Sleeping Beauty, not to be mean, but because he honestly looked peaceful, like he was dreaming. Sharp jawline, dark lashes, messy brown hair. I remember the first time I had to change his IV line. I was struck by how human he looked, how untouched by the world he seemed. Unlike the others, tubes everywhere, bandaged limbs, bleeding wounds. Jacob was clean, perfect, frozen in time. I never spoke to patients in comas. It always felt pointless. But with him, it started small. One night, I whispered, "Good night, Jacob," before leaving the room. Another night, I said, "You had a stable day today." And then, one night, I sat down in the chair next to his bed and told him everything. It was stupid. I'd just gone through a breakup, a short, ugly one. My ex dumped me after I told him I might want kids someday. Said I was too intense. I felt disposable, invisible. But Jacob, he was there, listening even if he wasn't. Nights went on. I started reading to him, sitting with him longer, talking to him about my past, my dreams, my fears. It sounds crazy, I know, but something about that silence, his silence, made me feel safe, heard, seen. Then came the touch. Innocent at first, adjusting his pillow, brushing his hair back, massaging his hands to keep circulation going. That's all protocol, right? Nothing weird, nothing unethical. That's what I told myself. But it didn't stay that way. I wish I could say it was a one-time mistake, that I had a breakdown or a moment of madness, but it wasn't like that. It was slow, intentional. Every night, just a little further. The staff was skeleton crew at night, 2 nurses, a security guard half asleep by the elevator, and a janitor who barely spoke English. No one ever checked room 208 after 2 a.m. It happened in February. It was raining that night, loud against the windows. I sat with Jacob longer than usual. I held his hand, then his face. I kissed him, and then I crossed the line. I know what you're thinking. I've thought it too, over and over. I replay that night every time I close my eyes. Was it abuse? Was it delusion? Was it love? I don't know anymore. All I know is that a month later, I missed my period. I panicked. Got 3 tests from Walgreens. All came back positive. At first, I told myself it couldn't be his. I told myself I must have been in denial about a fling I had before the breakup. But I knew. I hadn't been with anyone else in months. I hadn't wanted to be with anyone. Just him. I didn't tell anyone. I kept working. I avoided the day shift nurses. I avoided eye contact with the other night nurse, Tanya, who was starting to ask questions like, "You feeling okay? You look pale lately." At 9 weeks, I fainted during a shift, dropped right in front of the vending machine. Tanya drove me to urgent care. That's when everything unraveled. The urgent care doctor didn't waste time. "You're pregnant," she said bluntly, her eyes scanning the test results. Tanya's jaw dropped. I tried to laugh it off, said it must have been a mistake. Maybe the flu, stress, hormones. But the doctor just looked at me like she'd seen it all before. "You're 9 weeks along," she said quietly. That's not stress. That's life growing inside you. I didn't sleep that day. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running the math in my head again and again, counting days, shifts, moments. There was no other explanation. It was Jacob's. I thought maybe I could hide it, carry the baby, quit the job quietly, move away. No one would ever know. But secrets rot. And mine spread faster than I could contain it. Tanya came by my apartment that weekend, brought soup and prenatal vitamins. She said she was proud of me, even though I hadn't said a word. Just congrats, like it was the most normal thing in the world. But I saw it in her face. The curiosity, the calculation. "Who's the dad?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I lied, said it was a guy from before, a one-night thing I didn't want to talk about. She nodded, too slowly. The next night at work, I saw her lingering in room 208, not doing anything, just standing there, looking at Jacob like she'd never seen him before. A week later, I was called into the supervisor's office. There were two people waiting for me, head nurse Delgado and the hospital administrator, Mr. Lennox. They both looked like they were trying very hard not to be the first one to speak. "We've had a report," Lennox said finally, adjusting his tie. "About a possible breach in patient care ethics." My stomach dropped. I tried to play dumb. "What kind of breach?" Delgado didn't look up. "Julie, is it true that you've been spending excessive time in room 208? I felt my whole body freeze. "He doesn't have family. I just wanted him to have some human presence." "There's more," Lennox interrupted. "A member of staff claims to have witnessed you behaving inappropriately. Intimate touching, kissing." I didn't cry. I didn't even speak. I just stood up and walked out, feeling like everyone in the building had X-ray vision. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. I threw up in the parking lot. That night, I sat in my car for hours, hands on my stomach. Jacob's child was inside me, and I was alone. People started talking. Tanya told someone who told someone else, and soon I was a whisper on hospital forums, an anonymous thread on Reddit. "Nurse gets pregnant by coma patient, real or fake?" I deactivated my socials, blocked calls. I didn't want sympathy or hate. I just wanted silence. But silence doesn't last. 2 weeks later, someone rang my doorbell. It was a lawyer. He handed me an envelope. "The family of Jacob Monroe is filing charges," he said. "Sexual misconduct, violation of patient rights, potential criminal investigation." My knees buckled. I barely made it inside before collapsing. Jacob had family? I didn't even know his last name was Monroe. No one at the hospital ever mentioned a single visitor. No parents, no siblings. But now they were here, and they wanted blood. The legal documents were full of cold language, unauthorized intimate contact, breach of ethical standards, potential felony conduct. I felt like a criminal, and worse, like a monster. The lawyer wasn't aggressive, just efficient. "We recommend getting your own representation," he said, before leaving. I didn't even ask for his name. I sat on the floor for hours, trying to feel the baby. There was no bump yet, just a quiet weight growing inside me. I whispered, "I'm sorry," again and again, like it would make a difference. The next few weeks were a blur of phone calls and panic attacks. I got a public defender who looked at me like he couldn't decide if I was insane or just stupid. He asked the questions I had feared. Was it consensual? How could it be? Why him? I had no answers that made sense on paper. I wasn't raped. I wasn't coerced. I wasn't delusional. But still, I had crossed a line that no nurse is ever supposed to cross, and I knew it. The case dragged on. The family, Jacob's aunt and older brother, pushed for charges. I finally saw a photo of them. The aunt looked like she hadn't smiled in 10 years. The brother looked furious, like he'd already decided what kind of person I was. But something changed around week 19. My lawyer got a call. The hospital wanted to settle, quietly. No press, no court, just a gag order, surrender of my nursing license, and the agreement that I'd seek psychological counseling. I took it. I didn't care about money. I just didn't want this to become a headline. I didn't want my kid to grow up with that kind of stain. But that wasn't the end. 3 days later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Julie, I don't know what to say. My name is Matthew Monroe, Jacob's brother. I've seen the footage. I've read the reports. I wanted to hate you. Honestly, I still do. But then I saw the ultrasound photo in your file, and I couldn't look away. That's my brother's kid, his only one, and maybe his last. I read it 10 times before I let myself breathe. The next day, I got another call from the hospital. Jacob had woken up. No one expected it. After more than a year in a coma, he just opened his eyes. It was all over the news. Man wakes from coma after 14 months. Doctors stunned. But they didn't know the whole story. I didn't know what to do. Should I go see him? Should I disappear forever? But I didn't get the choice. A week later, I got another letter. This one wasn't from his brother. It was from Jacob. Julie, they told me everything. I don't remember anything past the accident. Just flashes, a voice reading to me, someone holding my hand, a kiss. I didn't know if it was real or a dream, but I remember your voice. I'm not angry. I don't know what I feel yet, but I don't hate you. If the baby's mine, I want to meet them, and I want to meet you. Just once. No lawyers, no cameras, just you. My hands were shaking. I sat there for hours holding that letter. I met him 3 days later in a quiet hospital room, this time as a visitor. He looked different awake, softer, smaller. He stared at me like he was trying to remember a dream. He asked me why me, and I said the only honest thing I could because you were the only one who listened. We sat in silence for a long time. No one touched, no big moment. Just two people staring at a mistake that somehow turned into a heartbeat. He asked to be part of the baby's life. I said yes. I'm not a nurse anymore. I can't ever be one again. But I'm a mother now. And that's the only label I'm willing to wear.